Welcome to the Future Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Peace, CEO and founder of Sway Outcomes. We are a global customer engagement consultancy, helping brands to build repeatable customer revenue streams through innovative customer strategy. In this podcast series, we look at the future of customer engagement. We understand that tomorrow's customer is hard to reach. Retaining and growing customer relationships has never been so difficult. I'll discuss the latest challenges and solutions with industry champions, and we focus on what's next for the future of customer engagement. If you'd like to be on the show, then find me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for new and interesting discussions with visionaries of customer success. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Future Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Peace, and I am thrilled today to be joined by Mike Migloire, the customer value guy. And we're going to be talking today about what the changing face of the customer is going to look like through the next few years or so. So, Mike, please, can you give us an introduction to who you are and a bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Tom. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm the customer value guy. I help businesses acquire the right customers, get them to stay longer, buy more, and cost less. I'm an expert in customer value management. So I've worked as a growth consultant, marketing director, and fractional chief marketing officer. I have expertise in pricing and proposition, customer marketing and engagement, and I've worked across a variety of B2B and B2C businesses, including News UK, HSBC, Tortoise Media, or The Observer. And I am also just about to start a new gig leading pricing and proposition at a global publisher, but I can't say which one it is just yet.
Oh, can we guess?
Yeah, I mean, let's not go down that route because there aren't that many, so I don't want
to. All right, okay. Mum's the word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I also I guess like notable things about me, like I launched the first machine learning personalization engine in the UK for publishing while I was at News UK with the support of the Google Digital News Innovation Fund. I've also won several awards for my work in artificial intelligence and retention. And, way back in 2017, was nominated for Customer Engagement Marketer of the Year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Great. Perfect. Well, I think this is going to be great then, because what we like to do on here, as you know, is talk about what the future for the customer is going to look like, whether it be loyalty, retention, engagement, experience, whatever. We try to delve into what's coming next. So we shall do so. But before we get into that, can you give us an idea of maybe a customer experience or a piece of customer service that you've just really enjoyed recently?
So I think John Lewis do it really well. And in part, I think it's because they're so consistent, both online and offline. I think, you go into a shop, you can purchase something, you can see the same message across channels. You also get personalized recommendations. And I think even their less salesy emails are executed and designed well. It is overall, I think, a very well-run operation. I always think that Amazon deserve a mention in this space because they really are certainly like the one to beat in terms of the use of data for how they, not only how they price their products, but also how they get their products in front of customers. So yeah, hard not to mention them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose to some extent, both of those retailers, but I think Amazon especially have really cornered the market in kind of the general customer experience. So, you order really easily through the app. There's reviews and recommendations from other people that have bought the item. It turns up the next day, etc. They make it so easy for you, right? And
yeah.
And that psychological threshold around the subscription, once you've paid that, you're like, everything has to go through there now. I've got to make as much out of that. So yeah, clever program, not to be underestimated.
Yeah, I think it's relevant for our conversation today as well. They make it easy. I think that is something that really matters when it comes to the future of both customer behavior and also customer management.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. Kind of convenience and ease of use are very, very high. People tend to be time poor these days, right? So we need to have these solutions really simple.
Incredibly so, yeah. But I think that I don't think it's just a question of being time poor. I think it is a question of expectations and the role that brands play in people's lives. Um, you have in some cases, certainly in one of the biggest markets in the world, in the US, you have a government that is starting to step away from um, regulating certain industries, certain sectors, you know, and you're seeing some private enterprise step in there, which, whether you agree with it or not, it is happening. I read the other day that Costco is going to start building apartments to help address the housing crisis.
Really?
Um, yeah, yeah, and so I think, but what's perhaps indicative of that is that more brands are going to be people. I think people will welcome brand presence in their lives in new ways that perhaps are maybe difficult for us to accept now, but maybe in 5 or 10 years time would might be run of the mill.
Explain. That sounds interesting, but what do you mean by that? You mean people will buy houses while they're in Costco? They'll be looking at.
I don't mean
I mean,
that. I
that's an
mean, I think,
extreme case, I suppose, but
yeah, I think people will go to Costco and then will leave and go up in the same building to the flat that is owned by Costco, that who
right.
also happens to be their landlord. You
Yeah.
know, it sounds in some ways quite dystopian, I think.
Mm,
But the expectation of ease and also of convenience, we think about these terms in quite consumerist oriented ways. But I think as time evolves, I think we might be surprised to see how the terms themselves also evolve. If you think about convenience, I mean, what could be more convenient than um, living in a flat owned by Costco
yeah.
and then going down to Costco? It takes 30 seconds, or even, maybe even you have something that's, Amazon, it's not far-fetched, right? Like, it's something they've tested,
Mm,
drones that actually deliver to you.
yeah.
Um, and one thing that they've tested in the past, although I don't know, I think they sunset this product, but there used to be buttons that you could push that would instantly order like key
Yeah.
products around the house, and so you were already in a place where AI can predict your needs before you really even know about them. I mean, that's what a lot of advertising infrastructure
Mm,
does, and why so many ads seem to be, uncannily targeted, or so timely, as if
yeah.
you're talking about something, and then the next time you're browsing, you see an ad for it.
Yeah.
I don't think some of these things are actually quite as far-fetched as we think. I mean, and I know I'm monologuing here a little bit, but if you think even 3 months ago, what may have been unthinkable has suddenly become thinkable. Certainly with regards to U.S. economic policy.
Mm.
I don't think it's so hard to believe that actually in marketing practice and marketing theory, you have some real evolution in um, how we think about consumer expectation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that the the foreign policy or the fiscal policy of the US is going to be around for very much longer. I think
Let's
they're all
hope not.
yeah, well, I mean they're already rolling back. But let's stay out of
Yeah,
politics. We're talking about customer here, but I totally understand what you mean. I think yeah, yeah, there's going to be some major changes to the way that we purchase. I think, I remember a time, because I'm really old, when brands were coming out with, white goods, laptops, things like that, and people were saying nobody's going to buy that online. Nobody,
yeah.
nobody's going to buy a washing machine without having actually seen it. And now,
Mhm.
the thought of actually going and looking at a washing machine, it's like, oh God, who can be bothered? Just order it online. And I ordered a car online, never drove it, literally just picked it, and then a few days
Yep.
later it turned up. I mean, this is the level that we're at now, which I think would be unthinkable, as you say, just a few years ago. People would be like, "What? You didn't even test drive it?" But now everyone's like, "Yeah, well, I did that as well. Yeah, just order it, turns up, just drive
Yeah.
it." Yeah, it's a strange world, isn't it?
But it's like the olden days, like that, and it applies to technology, certainly, like um, technology is indistinguishable from magic or sorcery
Yeah,
to somebody who doesn't, say somebody from 100 years ago. I mean,
yeah,
if you imagine showing somebody, who was our age in, 1901, Chat GPT,
yeah, yeah.
they might worship it as a god.
Well, some do now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think certainly when it comes to customer expectations of what is acceptable for a brand to do, um, I think we're in for an interesting ride. Um,
yeah. Now that is an interesting subject to poke at, actually. What is acceptable to do? I think the younger generations are just, I mean, they can't remember a time before the internet, before
yeah,
mobile, before smartphones, etc.
yeah.
And I did watch an article yesterday where a guy was saying the people that are born now will never remember a time when they can't interact with a machine.
Mm,
So they're just going to be like, speaking to the washing machine to turn it on, speaking
yeah,
to the dishwasher, whatever, and all machines. And people do now have conversations with Chat GPT. That's
yeah.
advertised on the telly, and other AI tools are available.
And
But yeah, it's an interesting world, isn't it? But the older generations are going to be a bit. I don't know. Are they going to pick this up in the same way? Maybe not so much. Will they
well,
get frightened off by it?
but I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit about how when you're the key for businesses in as customer expectation evolves is to find a way of harnessing those expectations and monetizing, while still delivering a really great customer experience. Um, and so I think this is where, when you're thinking about the drivers of customer value and lifetime value, it's both what you're selling and how you get it in front of those customers and keep them coming back. So it's both about product market price fit, but then also your means to drive recurring revenue. And some of that will be built into the product, but some of it is inevitably going to be driven by push and pull marketing efforts. And I think when you're developing a proposition portfolio, it's really important to be as holistic as possible. And this is some of the stuff
Mm.
that I do with businesses. I help. I audit proposition portfolios and then have a trademarked approach towards developing new propositions that focus on the four key drivers of value. So who is our customer? What pain points is our product solving for them? In what context does this product exist? So, what is the market for it? What are the basis of our competitive advantage, and profit? So, what is our revenue model? What's our pricing strategy? What do our unit economics look like? How does this compare against the market? And is this viable when you're looking at customer sensitivity and elasticity as well? The attitude and their actual behavior. So when you're thinking about how do we say harness these kind of new trends that are coming up, it pays to be thinking about not only the say older generation, and say, how does your proposition change for them, and how is it different for the younger generation who may have very wildly different expectations?
Yeah. So is that about leaving open a lot, leaving open more channels of communication? So because I feel like a lot of brands are like, oh great, we can just plow into AI and that'll do everything for us. And actually, not everyone wants that. An example I've got of, I'm not a big chatbot fan. I've got to be honest.
Yeah,
I find it much easier to speak to an actual human being. But I saw, well, about a year ago now, I saw Air France talk about how their app, over 50% of people prefer to deal with the chatbot than a person through through the airline customer service. And I think that's, I mean, obviously Air France have really invested in that AI and they've taught it and it's learned and it's been going for some
Mhm.
time, etc. I think some of the airlines I've dealt with could probably take a look at that because their chatbots are not at that level. But that's great if they've been able to do that. But there still must be people like me that would just prefer to speak to a person, even if it's quite an easy
Mm.
task. So yeah, do we need to kind of leave multiple channels open for all the different use cases?
I think so, but it also needs to be on the basis of cost benefit. So, my whole, I think what is different about me versus say other growth consultants or fractional CMOs is that I believe that organizations exist to drive value both for shareholders and consumers. So this sort of 1980s approach towards profit management or profit generation,
Mm,
that like it's all about shareholder value. I don't think that that really works in the 21st century, and that and nor do I believe that the two things are mutually exclusive. They can't be like, and to pretend as though they are sets up this sort of weird straw man. And I've seen it in boardrooms with some of the clients that I've worked with. It's you can have both. You can have a really great customer experience without sacrificing profitability. And in this case, the kind of customer experience guy in me says, do you know what? You do need to go where the customer is. You need to be able to have all these channels available to them, so that you're making it as easy as possible. But like the accountant in me is sort of like, well, but how much is that going to cost?
yeah.
And so there needs to be a balance, I think, between understanding, um, you know, what kind of take up are we expecting on this channel, and actually how much of a primary channel is this? And who are the types of people that might be using it? So if you say it's a small group, but that they're incredibly high value customers, you know, I've got a great example actually. One time I worked at when I was working at News UK, we had a group of like it's a couple thousand customers that were on a legacy version of the app that could only be accessed with like an older version of an iPad.
Okay.
And it was actually cheaper for us to buy all those customers new iPads
Really?
than it
Then
was
continue to run. Yeah, okay.
that app. Yeah, and that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Wow,
You
really?
know,
You just sent them all an iPad?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were of course, you had to sign up to like a 2-year contract,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but yeah, it was the iPad was free, like and so I think that is actually a great example of that of balancing that equation of actually that was a great compromise because customers, their experience was great, and from a cost point of view, it actually saved us money.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's these kinds of questions that I think customer businesses will have to grapple with as customer expectations change in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good example though, because probably a finance guy would just say, well, it's costing us a fortune to keep this system going for only 2,000 customers. Let's just
Mm,
close it off, and if we lose them, we lose them. That might have been a kind of a few years back, but actually,
yeah,
a more innovative approach is how much is it going to cost us if we lose these guys? Well, let's just give them all an iPad because we don't. If these guys are really invested, we don't want to lose that revenue just over a technology issue.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's like any good crisis. You don't want to waste it. You want to
yeah,
turn it into some sort of opportunity,
yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
I think we did a good job of that.
yeah,
Back at news.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, really good one. And I suppose there's an interesting thing you said there, and this came up on a podcast we did recently with a lady called Claire Gartland, who perhaps you
Mm,
know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she was talking about how brands at the minute maybe they either intentionally do this or it just kind of defaults where the data, the relationship, the customer marketing piece has sort of fallen into the CRO because the
Mm,
CRO is saying, how do we make money out of this relationship? Or how do we make money out of this data? And
yeah.
actually, maybe it's time that we need to start clawing that back under the CMO because actually it should just be about good experience for the customer, and that will drive revenue rather than
Yeah.
keep pumping them offers, keep drive the frequency, drive the value. That's not a good experience, and maybe it needs to come back into a more of a marketing approach.
Yeah, I think, my answer to this question is everything in moderation, right? Like I've had a lot of ecom clients who do just that, like who it's not necessarily that CRM is reporting to the CRO, but just that it's every week to every segment,
Yeah,
offer, sales,
yeah,
sales, sales, get them in the door. Which kind of works for a while, but eventually is gonna
burns
stop
out.
working. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna burn out. And so there needs to be a balance between the kind of relationship building work that CRM marketers are really great at, which is a slower burn thing, as all relationships are, versus some of the hard line sales approach. And I think the best solution to that is where you're balanced, and that means both in terms of like individual comms that you send, but also overall phasing. This is where planning really helps. Like I think a lot of CRM teams um, are driven by. I mean, and I'm making some generalizations here, but these are based on an experience of both myself and many other CRM marketers that I have met. But many CRM folks are like pretty data oriented. They are actually like natural planners, and because CRM is so multifaceted, it requires so many different skills to do well. Like most people who are great CRM marketers, like they they manage to balance all of this stuff effectively, like project management with forecasting, and also creative review, and also stakeholder management to get things done. It's not as I think these the types of personalities who are good at that are natural planners, and oftentimes, particularly, say ecom organizations, that sort of that doesn't always gel with like the kind of culture that exists within hardcore ecom, like sales focused driven organizations. And so I think there needs, in some ways, the job of a customer marketing, particularly in the future, is still gonna be, I think, helping to educate stakeholders internally about the value of CRM, about why actually planning matters. Because when you're thinking about that relationship, you have to have a long-term view, and
yeah.
because all of that will influence lifetime value.
Yeah, that's right. Totally. So yeah, we've got to stop thinking about CRM as in what offer are we sending this week, and actually start
Yeah.
thinking about,
I,
well, where does this relationship need to be in the next 6 to 12 weeks? Yeah.
yeah, and I don't even think that is what CRM is. Like, what offer should we send this week? Like,
No,
that's
I
a,
think some brands use it like that. I think,
I think you're right, but I think
yeah,
that's wrong.
yeah, totally, totally it is. Yeah, yeah. If you're, I don't know, selling jeans, not to have a
Yeah.
dig at anybody out there that is selling jeans, I'm just talking about the frequency of purchase. People might buy 2 or 3 pairs of jeans a year. If you're sending them a weekly offer, that's not relevant enough. It's good. You need to start thinking about how else are you engaging the customer, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's actually, I think, where having a line in with, like, whoever is managing pricing and proposition, because it is huge drivers of customer lifetime value, but also brand. Like brand
Yeah,
teams have a huge role to play in the creation of content that can be used, repeatedly, but also as evergreen. And where that doesn't work, because it's not possible for every kind of brand, um, you know, getting into a content creation cycle that can be used to build relationships with consumers.
yeah,
Um, it's really the only way that you see, I think, sustainable revenue growth is all these things have to be right. Like you've got to have the right proposition that's aimed at the right people at the right price. But also, once you get them in the door, you've got to keep them coming back. And so the only way you're going to do that is by working collaboratively across the organization to get the right type of content in front of them that builds that relationship.
yeah,
And that can, and I say content, it can be both. It can be like things they read, it can also be stuff that gets distributed on social channels, it can also be stuff that happens offline. So even events that and publishers have been pioneers here. Um you see a lot of offline online kind of crossover with publishers where they run events with journalists, or high profile people. Like that works. That stuff builds relationships, it builds retention, and it builds customer lifetime value.
Mm. Yeah, perfect. I think it's absolutely right, actually, what you're saying there. I think brands need to think more holistically, but that does
Yeah.
kind of mean having the customer right at the heart of your business. And that's maybe going to be a bit of a change for some brands. It might feel a bit difficult because it's not maybe so targeted towards generating revenue and saving costs and things like that. But that I think is the change for the future, is that there are so many touch points for the customer. It needs so much planning and so much control that
Mm.
actually it's really got to come into all parts of your operation.
What do they say? Only fools make predictions, but I'd love to see. I I I think one thing that I find a little disheartening is that we've been talking about putting the customer at the center of things. Like certainly since I started in marketing, which now it's a long time ago. Almost 15 years. And like still organizations are struggling to do that. Like when actually, if more organizations thought about what customer pain points were and how they would be solving them, and harness the power of the organization around that goal,
Yeah,
actually some of those other pieces that are like the kind of like what I think traditional teams might see as like the harder aspects of a business, like cost management, profit management, even things like supply chain management, like those things start to fall into place.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
uh, so I'd love to see, like with the advent of AI, with you know more mechanisms internally like cross-functional teams, you know people like organizations start to kind of coalesce around that in a healthier way. But who knows?
yeah, yeah. I love it. But we're not going to get into AI, not today anyway. We can always talk about that another time. But
Well, we've
yeah,
talked about that before. I mean,
we have. Yeah, we have. Not on the podcast, on a webinar, but yeah,
not on
we
the
have. And
podcast. Yeah,
but we'll maybe we'll
I
loop
have
back and
mixed
talk
views.
about that. Yeah, I know you do. I know. You're a tiny bit of a cynic in some areas, but that's fine. And I'd actually agree. I think AI is an investment. It's not a way of saving money. It's an investment to create a USP. And I think the press would have us believe that everyone's going to be out of a job, etc. But actually, I think businesses need to see that as an investment. They are going to have to find extra money, not save money in the short term, at least. But
Yeah,
look, I think we'll leave it there. We try to keep these kind of 20 minutes, so I think we've run out of time on
cool.
that. But should any of the listeners, viewers have any questions for us, please do just find us on LinkedIn. Reach out to us. We're always very happy to answer questions. But before you go, one random question. And your random question would be, what is the best Disney movie?
Well, it's obviously Aladdin.
Of course it is. Obviously. I mean, Robin Williams, right? No,
Yeah,
no
Robin
question.
Williams. Yeah, but also the guy who plays Jafar. I mean, I can't remember what his name
Ah,
is, but I love the deadpan. I love the deadpan. Yeah. And who's that comedian that does Iago? Like, oh man,
ah.
I can't remember. Anyway, but I would also I
Yeah,
have to
he is
say,
good. He's really good.
close second, I think, would have to be the live action version of 101 Dalmatians, because Glenn Close, man, just plays
That's right. And
a
she
just
gets,
fantastic Cruella de Vil.
she does. And she gets flipped off the cliff at the end of it, doesn't she? The dogs, don't they
Does
flip her off
she?
the cliff? I think so, if I remember.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I
It's a
don't
little
remember.
bit, she is great. Yeah,
She
she
just
is good.
plays unhinged so well.
Yeah, yeah, she really does. Well, my one of my other favorites actually would be Sleeping Beauty, just because the baddie in Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping
I mean, that's
Beauty.
like it's an
Oh,
old one. It's like 70 years old, but the baddie in that, oh, incredible! Best baddie of all the
wait,
Disney movies.
that's Maleficent.
Maleficent, yeah, but it's the
Yeah,
original
yeah, yeah, the
cartoon one,
original, right.
and she's got the voice, and she's oh, it's dark, but yeah, scares the hell out of the kids.
Okay.
She's great.
I'm not sure I think I have seen it. Yeah, but it's like
It's
not
a
for a
real old one.
long time.
It's one of the OGs. I think it's kind of one of
Yeah.
the first ones, but yeah, it's a good one. Anyway, we get distracted. So thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really good conversation. Thank you
Yes.
also to everybody that's tuned in to listen. Like I say, you got any questions, find us on LinkedIn. Always happy to help. So thanks, Mike. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Tom, so much for having me. Yeah, I hope to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Speak soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye bye.